Hello again everybody, and welcome to my YouTube channel, and actually to a new year and a new decade, 2020. And so let's hope this is the year when we can finally end the stigma of mental illness and actually stop bullying. Today I'm going to be talking to you about seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, in children and teenagers. My name is TraceyMaxfield. I'm a recently retired RN, peer specialist, staunch mental health stop bullying advocate and educator. And my focus, if you've been following my YouTube videos, is on talking about suicide and mental illness and bullying in children and teenagers. My philosophy is to engage, educate, and empower. Now, before we go on, as it's the start of a new year and you're watching this video, there are lots of videos already that I've produced. I believe this is number 28, and there will be more coming up, and I'll be talking about some really interesting topics regarding bullying and also mental illness in children and teenagers. So please, if you look at the button below the video, consider subscribing to my channel. You can also follow me on social media, and if you check out my website www.TraceyMaxfield.com, each video is accompanied by a much longer article, and also I have a newsletter, a monthly newsletter. So now that that's all over with, let's begin. So seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, is also commonly known as winter depression. And I think the challenge is that lots of people routinely can get cabin fever or the winter blues during the winter months. Lack of sunlight, darker days, grey, low clouds. For example, where I live, it's always low clouds and grey during the winter. And even though I have major depressive disorder, I think, experience a little bit more an exacerbation of my depression during the winter months, and I can attribute that maybe to SAD. So it's estimated that about 3 to 5% of children and teenagers actually experience SAD. And whilst SAD has exact same signs and symptoms to a major depressive disorder, what is unique about SAD is that it is primarily a seasonal depression. So what I mean is it only comes during the winter months when the days get shorter and the nights get longer, and it usually disappears when spring arrives. So let's think of when the clocks change and the nights get longer and darker. So that's towards the end of October, beginning of November, until I'd say late March, early April. That's when seasonal affective disorder usually occurs. And actually, for an accurate diagnosis of seasonal affective disorder, signs and symptoms must be present daily for at least a minimum of 2 weeks, and they must occur seasonally and have been around at a minimum of 2 years. Now, the challenge, of course, with children and teenagers is that it's always really difficult to determine, are they going through some changes? Is it hormones? Are they having problems at school or with a friend? Is there some other illness going on? And so, first of all, I'm going to give you an idea of why they think SAD occurs, and then I'll go into the signs and symptoms. So they think that SAD is triggered by the brain's response to the decreased daylight exposure. And whilst there's not 100% conclusive research on this, they do believe that the role of sunlight plays a significant part in the brain's production of chemicals, namely 2 chemicals that are involved with sleep, the sleep-wake cycle, and also in energy and mood. And these 2 chemicals are melatonin, and melatonin we know is used in sleep production. So when it gets dark, our brain triggers melatonin, which gets us ready to go to sleep, promotes sleepiness, and also serotonin. And serotonin responds to sunlight. So when there's a lot of bright sunlight, our serotonin levels increase, and that makes us happy and kind of boosts our mood. So you think with winter, what happens is with the decreased sunlight, our serotonin levels plummet, which means our energy and our mood and our feelings of joy and happiness can actually decrease, and our melatonin increases, which promotes more sleepiness, longer sleep, and again leads to more fatigue and just feelings of tiredness all the time. So the signs and symptoms of SAD, as I said, purely seasonal, but are very similar to major depressive disorder. So that's sadness, lethargy, sleep problems, and it's usually actually too much sleep, irritability, crankiness, temper tantrums. You may notice the social isolation or withdrawal, not only from family and friends, but also from any activities. Low energy, cries, gets easily upset, difficulty in concentrating, feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, worthlessness, a lack of interest, lack of enjoyment. You notice they become sort of a recluse or a hermit. Very self-critical, hypersensitive to any comments that are made about them. And also you're going to notice a change in diet, and usually they eat too much, and what they actually eat are carbohydrates. They crave carbohydrates and junk food and sugary sodas. And what that happens, of course, is the effect on the body is that also leads to tiredness and lethargy and exhaustion. And so it's not unusual that we see maybe children and teenagers actually start to put on a little bit of weight during the winter months. And this is consistent. It's not just isolated maybe to festive activities such as the holiday season. So risk factors are definite family history. Also, what we've noticed is that females are 4 times more likely to develop SAD than males. Current environment can trigger it. Think ACEs, adverse childhood events. Also, SAD is more prevalent to those living in the higher altitudes. So for example, SAD is 7 times higher amongst children and actually adults in New Hampshire than in Florida. So I hope this has given you an understanding of what SAD is. Now, an accurate diagnosis must be made, one, because many of the signs and symptoms could mimic another mental disorder, but also the signs and symptoms are also very similar to ADHD. And so for an effective management plan, an accurate diagnosis is needed. Now, once a diagnosis of SAD is confirmed, our treatment options include increased light exposure, very, very, very important. And so maybe consider using full spectrum light bulbs in the home. So it gives more light, it lulls the brain into thinking that there's more sunlight. Light therapy, and those are SAD lamps, so seasonal affective disorder lamps. And actually, if I can reach one, I will show you. I have a SAD lamp. And so what the SAD lamp does is you sit in it once or twice a day for a period of anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, and it triggers the brain into thinking it's being exposed to sunlight. SAD lamps are actually very safe because there's no ultraviolet light exposure, unlike the sun rays. Now, what I need to point out, and I think this is where you would need to talk to your therapist and to your physician, is there's limited research in the effectiveness of SAD lamps on children under the age of 9. And so for that reason, many children don't actually use light therapy. But again, I think it's having a discussion with your therapist and physician. SAD lamps for adults and for teenagers actually very effective, and I can attest to that. Talk therapy, family counselling, extremely important. As I said, with a child or a teenager, it is a family issue. It is not a individual issue. Medications are rarely prescribed, but if the symptoms are particularly severe, because SAD, like depression, could be mild, moderate, or severe. So if the symptoms are particularly severe and are actually impacting your child or teenager directly in their day-to-day life and functioning, and maybe there's even a little bit of suicide ideation, the psychiatrist or physician may consider giving antidepressants. These are very, very good treatment options, namely an SSRI, selective serotonin receptor inhibitors. They will regulate the balance of serotonin in the brain, and they are the transmitters that kind of regulate the mood and the energy. And then the final one that I'm going to point out is called the Human Lumi light. Now, this is not actually a light you sit in front of. They're actually human charger headphones which use fiber optic UV-free blue enriched white light directly into the ears. And studies indicate that the light increases the energy levels, which boosts productivity and decreases the symptoms of SAD. Lots of people say it's not effective. Other people, for example, a study just conducted in Finland says that it's got significantly great results. And Norway, Sweden, Finland are actually renowned for having an increased incidence of depression. Think of where they're located. I think a couple of weeks ago I read an article in one of the newspapers that a woman who has been experiencing SAD for a number of years actually tried these headphones and found when she was at work and just going about her household tasks and going outside that they actually worked very well, and her symptoms resolved significantly. Now, as a parent or guardian, or actually any friend, sibling, family member, I think what is important is that if you see that there's a change in your child or teenager, you need to ask yourself 3 important questions to determine if in fact it could be SAD. How was your child or teenager in the summer? Were they like this in the summer? If so, then it's unlikely to be SAD. Has the symptoms come on around October, November? Was he or she like this the same time last year? That should trigger, okay, this could be SAD. And also ask yourself, is anything else going on? Because it could be bullying. It could be that they're into drugs or alcohol, that they're mixing with the wrong friends. There's many factors to consider. So what I would advise you to do is actually ask yourself those 3 questions and then note the time frame when the change was noticed in your child and what exactly are the signs and symptoms. That will be help you be more informed and readily prepared when you actually go to see a physician to get an assessment and then to follow up with a therapist. So once it's confirmed, what you need to do, find out as much as possible about SAD so you can help not only yourself understand but also other family, but also to talk to your child or teenager to explain that this is only short term, that it will resolve, and discuss ways of coping throughout those winter months. Participate in the treatment plan, follow up with therapy, watch for side effects, watch for any changes in mood that you need to report, ensure medications are taken. Keep to a daily routine, promote restful sleep. So, the bedtime at the same time. Make sure that the room is cool and dark, but also maybe set up one of these alarms with a built-in light that goes off maybe 30 minutes before rising, because by giving the light in the room, it stimulates dawn, which then gets the brain into thinking, okay, it's time to get up. Also, maybe consider moving the bed or the desk closer to the window so there's more not a natural light. Change the light bulbs in your home. Consider investing in a SAD lamp, and they're actually not that expensive. Other things, talk with your child or teenager. So you, again, as I always say, it's be non-judgmental, listen to their concerns and fears, offer support and guidance, be very, very patient, show love, spend some one-on-one time with them, because they may have SAD, but there's other things going on. This is a child or a teenager. They're growing, they're developing, they're exploring the world and how they matter in the world. Try and do outdoors activity, at least a minimum of 20 to 30 minutes daily, whether or not it's walking for a dog, building a snowman, just going for a walk. Going out into the light is going to help. Even if it's a grey day, there's still an element of light. Other things, follow up with school and set up strategies to help them with their homework assignments. What we have found is that children and teenagers who experience SAD, actually their grades get worse during the winter months, and they may actually start failing class. The point I'm trying to make is that by working with the child, it's not going to make them feel like they're failing, they're not going to do well, that they're going to fail this school year. And also it helps the teacher and the school counsellor understand what's going on. At that time you may actually want to enlist the help of a tutor or something just to get your child or teenager through those difficult months. Another thing is diet. I always promote the healthy holistic approach. That means meeting their physical, social, emotional, spiritual needs, but also nutrition. So again, lots of fluids, but what's really important is try and promote more fruits and vegetables and more complex carbohydrates, not the instantaneous macaroni and cheese, junk food, McDonald's burgers and things. And reduce sugary sodas, because that's not going to help with their mood as well. They're kind of going into that squirrel or chipmunk hibernation mode. Also, what you could do is talk to the teacher and see if they can move the desk closer to the window. Now again, we don't want to, what can I say, make it obvious that there is a problem with the child in school, because that can lead to taunting and teasing and bullying, but little strategies that may help them get through that those winter months, which, as I said, think October through to early April. Obviously, when you have a child or teenager that is hurting and going through a mood disorder, be very cognizant for the signs that they're getting worse, or if there is suicide ideation. And that's why it's important that you have that one-on-one time and talk with them, and really be aware of cues that could indicate something is not going well. Also, by talking with your child, you're going to be aware if they've been subjected to any bullying at school, which you need to tackle head on immediately. And so I think the optimistic thing is that it is only seasonal, and when the spring comes and the light, the days get lighter, then you will notice that your child or teenager's mood has increased significantly, and then they seem, back to normal again. But you still need to help them through those months, because if they get really hopeless and helpless and feel worthless, they may not pull out of the mood as quickly, because it may have then led into maybe a more major depressive disorder, or they may have developed an anxiety or an obsessive compulsive disorder related to their inability to deal with what's happening to them. So I hope you found these suggestions helpful, and if you actually go to my website, you'll find a much longer article which gives a little bit more information about seasonal affective disorder in children and teenagers.